In today's Farm Report, transitioning cattle throughout their lactation is important if you want to keep them healthy and comfortable. Jim Sulphur with the University of Minnesota Extension Service Office has more.
So goes the transition period in a cow's lactation, as so goes her entire lactation. And so it's really important to focus on that period of time of a cow. And I think after they calve in and you have a really good transition period, the rest of the lactation really appears to be pretty much a cakewalk compared to that, month or 2 month period of time. And so today I'm going to kind of summarize some of the keys to making that period a successful period in kind of a cow's lactation stage. It's really important to provide a lot of bunk space. I think we've talked about that a lot, so I don't think I'm saying anything new that people don't know. But get out there and make sure you provide at least 28 to 36 inches of bunk space per cow. On top of that, provide ideally more than one freestall space per cow. Front one would be okay, but as you go in these barns, and I think as we see more research that's coming in, oftentimes these cows don't like to lay next to each other as they're getting close to calving. They lay down a lot more when they're dry. They're on a higher forage diet. They're just heavy and uncomfortable, and they take up a lot of space, and they don't like to lay next to other cows. So ideally it'd be nice to actually have more than a freestall space per cow, and maybe one freestall space per cow after they calve, or maybe even a little bit more than that. Make sure they have plenty of water, ideally one water for every 20 to 25 cows. Again, for kind of the same reasons. From a facility standpoint, you can almost take a lactating cow and double everything. Not quite, that's maybe a little unrealistic, but double as far as bunk space, minimum bunk space is concerned. You can almost double the number of watering spaces that you need, or the inches you need per watering space, because these cows are just slower. They don't interact. They're not nearly as aggressive, especially the more submissive cows. On top of that, I think it's important to provide plenty of comfort and cooling. I'm seeing more of that, but if you haven't done cooling in your close-up cows, or your dry cows and your fresh cows, you always see it in fresh cows, but not close-up cows. It's a lot of really good data out of Florida that really shows that you get a lot more milk out of cows from her current lactation, which isn't really very surprising, but maybe the surprising thing that their research would show, the calves' livability is a lot better. Again, maybe not a surprise, but those calves born from cows that were cooled actually produced quite a bit more milk once they calved. And so I don't know if that situation would hold true in Minnesota. I hope somebody looks at it from a research standpoint. But if it does, clearly you can pay for any of those close-up facilities or cow cooling fairly rapidly. This has been Jim Sulphur with the University of Minnesota Extension in St. Cloud.
The Minnesota Department of Agriculture has released its 2015 Green Book, a set of stories about sustainable agriculture research and demonstration projects that are taking place on Minnesota crop, livestock, fruit, and vegetable farms. For more information, visit the Minnesota Department of Agriculture's website or call 651-201-6012. Feed ration consistency is important if you want each cow to get the same type of nutrition, and that can be easily done with a TMR or totally mixed ration. But as Jim Sulphur with the University of Minnesota Extension Service Office reports, you should conduct an audit to make sure you're doing the ration properly.
Most of our dairy farms now feed total mixed rations, or TMRs for short, where really we mix all the feed ingredients together. And one of the goals of that is that every bite that the cow takes of every different cow is exactly the same, and it'll be as close to our nutrient requirements as we need. But that may or may not be the case depending upon how well we manage our mixer, and part of that's determined our ingredients and our mixer and how we manage our mixer. And so I'm going to talk some of those factors that will make sure or ensure that our mixer is doing the best it can, and that our diets are really the best it can as we feed it in front of the cows. First of all, I think it's important on a regular basis to check your TMR mixer for wear and tear. You think about all the work that they have to do. There's augers in there that mix all this feed up, and make sure you examine the kicker plates for wear. Look for worn augers, dull or missing knives, and those knives eventually wear out, and mixers eventually wear out, so we need to rotate those knives, and most likely it's best to rotate them on on a regular basis. So maybe replace half the knives when they're getting partly wore out, then replace the other halves, because other half, otherwise we go from very dull knives that we're maybe used to managing in a certain way, and then we go to all new knives that we have to manage in a very different way. Make sure you actually time the mix after how long we mix it after the last ingredient. Most of these mixes require about 5 minutes at a certain RPM. You might want to check with the manufacturers and see what their recommendation is, but it's really important to get that proper mix time at the proper speed. One of the things I see often is that the load sizes are too big. I'll be on farms and I'll see the mixer looks full to me, and they'll go get another load and dump it in, and they'll get another load and dump it in. Really, mixers are designed for all these feed particles kind of fall together at the same time. When they're falling over the edges, or even when the mixer is extremely full, that really doesn't happen. Try to mix on level ground as you can, otherwise the feed ingredients may float from one area to another. A loading sequence is important. Generally, you want to load the lower density and large feed particles in first, then the dry grains, then wet byproducts, and then haylage and corn silage, and typically the liquid is last. Make sure if your mixer isn't capable of processing hay or straw and you're feeding that you pre-process it somehow. And then make sure you check the results at the bunk. That's really where the proof is in the pudding. It's important to maybe check 10 to 15 different samples, or we used to put jelly beans in the mix and throw it in a periodic basis and see how spread out they were over the bunk. They're pretty easy to see, and that's one way to kind of do it, also kind of a cheap way. This has been Jim Salfer with the University of Minnesota Extension in St. Cloud.
How might the newly agreed upon Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal benefit U.S. ag producers and exporters? USDA, through the Foreign Agricultural Service, offers a look via a series of web infographics
that show what this means for each state and what it means for each sector, whether it's beef or pork or potatoes or corn or citrus. So we've a lot of data there.
FAS Administrator Phil Karsing says the breakdowns are found at www.fas.usda.gov/TPP. Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack offers specific examples.
We'll see 74% of the tariff lines or taxes that have been assessed by the Japanese on beef and beef products will be eliminated or cut over the next 16 years. 65% of tariffs on pork will be eliminated in Japan in 11 years or less, nearly 80% in 16 years or less. That market opportunity is going to open not only in Japan but also in Malaysia and Vietnam, where all tariffs are going to be reduced and eliminated.
I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.